All right, so this is the Drupal 8 Cross Initiatives meeting for January 10th, 2019. What we usually do on these calls is we go through the various initiatives and discuss wins and pain points, and hopefully figure out ways we can help each other move forward and where we can inform each other about things. And the next deadline we are working against is in around 2 months. So the alpha for 8.7 will be March 18th, which is a little less than 2 months, 2 months and a week from today. So that's the deadline where we are looking to make Drupal 8.7 API complete. So we should focus on what we want to achieve there and how we can help each other make that happen. We should start with the arrival order, if that's okay. So I think David arrived first. You want to start?
Hi. I'm happy to start.
Perfect.
So I participated in last week's meeting for the auto update initiative. We have stuff. We mostly did bookkeeping work last week in terms of making sure that we got our agenda online. We have all the phases of the projects up. Let me actually give a link to that. Is it possible for me to just suggest that in the doc? Let me just try that. A little hard for me to do here, but but that's the URL that needs to go in. So that is or wait, that is the correct one. Okay. So we have it looks like we do have the funding from the EU, and we're basically going to be applying that towards phases A and B in this proposed roadmap that originated from the Midwest Developer Summit. And then it's still with an eye toward the C, D, and E phases, which are intended to be the more long-term things. I'm not sure I have much else to report from our initiative. Let's see here. Auto updates. Where is our channel? There it is. And then let me see our other agenda stuff. There's just mostly internal bookkeeping around how we have meetings, and we discussed a little bit about the gap between where the Composer initiative will end and our stuff will sort of pick up, in the sense that there are some elements that are out of scope for the Composer initiative that will probably have to be pulled into scope for auto updates. And that's not necessarily a problem. It's just we just want to make sure that we have a coherent idea of how the handoff happens in terms of what projects are taking on what.
Hey, David, do you want to refresh me on what where that boundary is?
I think that some of it is around things like whether the Composer initiative will take on. Well, actually, I'll just go with the conclusion that the Composer initiative is not taking on anything around, say, managing static assets on the site, in the sense of having any sort of integration where static assets get registered in the framework and then get deployed to a specific directory that is then sort of a web accessible directory that then is where the actual assets get accessed by people browsing the site.
Yeah, that is correct. That's not. I mean, it's something we would like to do eventually. It's something that needs to be done eventually. I just don't know whether that's targeted for 8.7 is really the out of scope part.
Oh yeah, I'm just trying to give an example of the sort of thing where it could theoretically fall under a Composer initiative, but it's probably not going to, and but it is something that we would like to get in place for at least the later phases of the auto update stuff, possibly under the auspices of auto update.
Sure.
Doesn't necessarily need to occur under the Composer initiative.
Right, exactly. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think I'm done.
So anything specific we can help you right now?
I don't really think so. I think that probably the next step on our side is actually locking down some of the dates for some of the actual work to occur, as well as some. We are looking for a vendor or two to perform some of the work for the EU grant. So I think we opened up the call a little bit last week for that, but I'm not sure how much we're asking just in general versus people in the auto updates group for suggestions, but we're probably open to suggestions from anyone across initiative as well.
All right. But let us know if we can promote something from there.
But I'm hesitant to put the out of scope stuff as a challenge because it doesn't actually affect our phase A and B stuff.
All right.
And we're really only planning out the phase A and B stuff right now. So it might be a challenge eventually, but I'm hesitant to cause other people to change the direction of or considerations of their work to help us target phases that we're not even really planning yet.
That makes sense. Sure. So what would be nice, not right now, if you can have a look at the automatic updates strategic initiative page, which I think is not up to date.
Do you have a link to that one?
And contribute, yes. Yeah.
This is different from the link I provided.
Yeah,
because we've been tracking it on that the node ending in 231. Let me see here.
Yeah, so this is like a marketing page that's supposed to make people understand at a high level what's going on, and it's definitely missing certain things. It's not your fault. So these are pages that NG and myself are maintaining for the initiatives, but we usually don't have enough information. So we'll probably sync up a flame and fill this in.
Okay.
Right. So I think the next one who arrived was Ryan, which is
yes. So composer initiative. The initiative has kind of stalled a little bit because holidays, and also my focus has been kind of moving over on the DA side to GitLab and deploying GitLab's backend implementation. However, in the meantime, right after the new year, Mile 23 came in and started fixing on the right now everything's coalesced around the scaffolding plugin to make sure that that is core ready, and it works. It just was lacking a great way to test to prove that it works. And I think Mile 23 went in there and he has passing tests, so I just haven't had a chance to review what he's done yet. But that's where that's at. If that is passing, then there's probably a few more passes we need to make at it to make it like fully core ready and make sure that we're not doing anything unusual. But it might be close to where we can RTBC it and get it in. But if it's not, then due to my focus on GitLab, I'm not sure how much more time I'm going to be able to put into it between now and the time that alpha gets cut. So it's kind of a tricky situation there. So the only thing I could use help on is anybody else getting in there with knowledge of this and doing some reviews. So maybe I could call in an airstrike or something for, say, Webflow or somebody like that.
What's is the add the composer scaffolding plugin to core?
Yes.
The one. So that's 2982684. Yeah, it would certainly help if people with knowledge of this would be able to review it. The people who've been working on it earlier, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But that's pretty much my whole update, and I've got an appointment later on, so I got to take off. So.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Unless there's any questions from others or concerns. Right. If you cannot involve more people, then let us know if we can help.
All right, I will do.
Sure.
Thank you. All
Sure.
right, I got to take off. Bye, everybody.
Sure. All right, and then the next person who arrived was Elliot.
Yo, out of the box. So we've had a massive patch committed this week that was around focus styles, a huge CSS one. And I think Keith has some kind of concerns and difficulties around working on a patch that large. So we had issues there. We also had issues where a lot of stuff had been blocked by getting that massive patch in. And the next thing we wanted to do was apply a CSS comb, because it looks very much from the documentation like that is the right thing to do to standardize your CSS. And so work was done there. And unfortunately, that then got blocked by committers as not the right thing to do. So we have a bit of an issue with documentation on D.O around that. Other out of the box stuff, the Spanish language standardization has like totally stalled now. There's not been any kind of advancement on the issue on standardizing the language standards for a bit. It would be really helpful if someone who actually speaks Spanish can review what is there in the issue and make sense and mark it as fixed, because I don't feel comfortable not having any Spanish except for asking for 2 beers in evaluating whether those standards as they are, well, first they need collating because they just exist as comments throughout the issue, and also they need collating and putting in the issue summary, and then somebody who speaks Spanish saying, yeah, that makes sense. That is something we could actually use as a basis to start translating content.
So Elliot, how big is the patch?
This isn't a patch, it's an issue. So we have one issue which says for the recipes that are in Umami in the article, okay, how we standardize language. Do we use serial commas? Do we display oven temperatures in Celsius and Fahrenheit?
Give me drop the issue in here, and I can have someone work on that.
That'd be awesome. Thank you so much. So that issue is we have one issue that one will refer to that's the English language ones. That one is to kind of get Spanish equivalents. And there's good work gone in there. So for instance, people have pointed out that serial commas are absolutely not used in Spanish, which is great. I wouldn't have known that. So it kind of needs consolidating and then comparing with the English ones. Is this enough that people could actually start going across?
Is it clear to someone? I'm looking at it real quick here. Is it clear to someone what we're asking, or is it so open-ended that maybe we're not empowering people enough?
From my point of view, which is subjective, it looks to me that you could read that and work out what we need to do next. If that's not the case, I can certainly try and help if someone can point out to me where the difficulties are.
Okay, I'll look through it and ask you in Slack if I have questions.
Great. Keith, did you want to add anything about the difficulties you've been having on with some of these live CSS changes?
Yeah, so obviously it's great news that we've got this focus styles patch in. So that's a nice big win for accessibility. And I think it just highlighted some concerns that I have now, just that we're needing to change things right down at the sort of the very base of the theme, that very base level, which obviously has a real knock-on effect. And you know, many other patches start to break. So it also obviously, being that we have to change a number of things in a number of places, the patch grows larger and larger. And so, although I'm currently taking a look at Tor, which I think is quite getting the Tor module working for Umami, I think that's quite a self-contained example where perhaps one large patch is going to be fine. But if we're thinking about something like Layout Builder, where the theme is really going to change as a result, I think we really could use having some conversations, some help, some guidance from folks. Maybe they've got experience of this before, making a big change to core. But yeah, that's what's been on my mind, is how if just the focus styles alone turned into quite a sort of mammoth effort to get that in, then how's that going to work out when we're doing something as sort of, as a bigger change as layout builder? I could imagine there being lots of, if you say break the task down, you can end up with lots of patches, and I don't know how that works in terms of how do they get reviewed, in what order, how do we get extra help with them? Yeah, all these questions. I think those questions didn't exist so much when we were working over on the previous system, which was GitHub, I think, because obviously we were just sort of going at it like you would with a normal theme. And obviously now that we're in core and working this way, all the rules have changed.
So do you have like specific suggestions that could improve the workflow?
No, I think it's a conversation point at the moment, and just sort of starting to turn over the potential issues. It would be probably because the patch has only just been committed. We've only just started sort of raising this conversation. So I guess it would be just good to get some help, maybe on one of our next calls. Maybe if you could join us, Gabor. I don't know, just anybody with this sort of right experience, just to give us any tips and tricks that we might want to think about now, so that we can work quickly.
Sure. Sure. As a general rule, small incremental improvements always win over big ones. Even though in your case, focus style sounds like a small incremental improvement, but in fact, the changes required were big enough and were hard to break down to smaller parts. So that's always a delicate question of what to do there exactly. Yeah, we should talk about that later when this settles down a bit.
Yeah, and whether there's something we can learn from, I don't know, some of the other initiatives like media, for example. Perhaps they have a similar thing where there's a whole host of features that need to work together to deliver the whole, and just how you approach that problem.
Yeah, good question. I'm happy to join on the call later and would welcome others. I think there's the out-of-the-box calls have been spotty recently, but they would generally be the same time 2 days earlier.
That's right.
So it's Tuesday, the same time. All right. Anything else for out-of-the-box?
I think that's pretty much everything at the moment.
All right. Who was next? I think Christina was next.
Yeah. Okay. So from the last time I came, the new theme Claro has been moved to Drupal.org. The 7 refresh, it's been called Claro, and it's been moved to Drupal.org after having some weeks of development in GitHub. And we moved all the open issues and updated them with the status and so on. And we still need to move some finished designs into the issue queue, and we have to update install instructions and so on. And for what it could be called the research or the wireframes, Angie, I think it was Angie, Angie, Gabor, and Laurie created an issue to ask for directional feedback for the next generation admin UI, which was a really blocker to move forward on the wireframes and on the testing and the design of the new generation. We're going to start the research to create a style guide for the Claro. I forgot that. And a part of this, just the small things like we are planning, sessions on events and this kind of things. And that's all for us so far.
Anything you specifically need help with? I believe that the implementation is going on, but they may need more people.
Yeah, ideally. But the most important thing is to move designs so more people can actually work on that. And active designers, there's only 2 or 3 of us. And we've been blocked these last 2 weeks. And I hope it's going to start moving again by the end of this week or beginning of the next one. So that's the most important thing to unblock. And there are not many designers that are actually helping in there. So, or at least that have enough knowledge about that.
Yeah, it seemed like so there's a lot of enthusiastic feedback on the blog post that Dries posted, and the issue about the design system, both. Mm-hmm. And then some new people came on the meeting, but they were mostly looking to either implement or just get a sense of what's going on.
Yeah, and actually, it's a really big document, the Figma document. So to have more designers working there, you really need to spend a lot of time to dig in and understand everything. So it's not that easy to jump in there and start helping. So it ideally should be someone that could explain some time every week. Yeah. I guess that's what's blocking people to actually help there.
Yeah, it's harder to sign up with that commitment. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So I think that all the tweets we've been putting out have underscored that we need designers as well as implementers to be involved.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't necessarily help.
Yeah. So the main concern is that having like 10 designers showing up and then explaining everything, and then they don't have time to. Well, not time. It's probably they don't have all the background knowledge that you need to start actually doing something and feel comfortable doing that. And it's not that easy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I will tell a couple of companies that I know that may be interested, but I'm not making any promises.
Yeah, I know. That's not easy.
All right. And then Lucas arrived.
Yes, this is he. I had it open. Let's see if I still do. Yep, I do. I'm gonna paste the link in. We had our weekly meeting earlier today, and the outcome of it is that we kind of realized we're really kind of getting a bit behind the 8 ball and slowing down on multilingual translations. There's about 11 issues and about 10 weeks until 8.7. So we're probably not going to make it, but it would be nice if we could get at least some of the higher priority issues knocked out, which gets closer to like 6 or 7 issues. And our tough thing is we just lost a maintainer to a job change to Python. He's now a Python developer who'd been spending a lot of time on multilingual. So and multilingual are traditionally the hardest things to work on. So just kind of a request for additional assistance on multilingual migrations to stabilize both 6 and 7 multilingual. Otherwise, we're doing good. We're trying to get ramped up for Drupal 9, get as much of our deprecated code ready to be cut out with a scalpel, we have lots and lots of deprecations, and we want to get as much of the cruft out as possible. I'm silent because I don't have much more to say.
All right. I also think that there's at least one UX issue outstanding for the upgrade UI that Vicky brought to the UX meeting, and we discussed that, and that's moving now.
Yes, that is very good.
Outstanding from December. That's also good. I think there was like some small changes suggested, but there is no earth-shattering things that are required to do there to move it forward.
No. It's unblocked. We've got good guidance on what to do. Just to update the information available to folks to say, hey, you don't have these modules enabled. Go out and enable them. That way you can migrate the content from to.
Yep.
If you don't have the destination enabled, you can't migrate into it.
Yeah. Indeed. Great. Any questions for Migrate from others? Suggestions?
If there's anyone who's got client projects or knows of client projects that are doing multilingual migrations, please come see us.
All right. I can report for Drupal 9, I guess, but before that, so Angie, do you have info on anything that has not been covered yet?
I don't think so. I think everyone's kind of just starting to crawl back this week into the driver's seat of various things. I have been talking back and forth with Sean B in the media initiative a little bit. We, are trying our best to break up the work so that it can be done in an incremental way. So in the short term, that might mean a little bit of UX regressions, but hopefully we'll get it all sorted by the time 8.7 is ready to be clamped down for feature freeze. And then the admin UI discussion that Christina alluded to, but other than that, I haven't really, I don't have much to report. Sorry.
All right. I've also seen a bunch of layout commits go on over the holidays, so they are working on adding some new layouts and cleaning up their stuff as well. And they are onboarding a new contributor this week, so I think that will hopefully move forward faster. I've also seen various discussions of the new help system that's being proposed. It's now based on Twig templates instead of hard-coded HTML in YAML files. Both have their advantages, but the Twig templates seem to be more liked by the reviewers so far, so that seems to be moving nicely as well. And then I can report on some progress on Drupal 9. So before the holidays, I posted No, I will step back from there. So on the Drupal 9 meetings, one of the critical things that we identified is how we support people working on adhering to deprecations. Because it's one thing that we are deprecating something, and it's another thing that people actually act on the deprecation. And the more we can get contrib maintainers and custom code builders to front load dealing with the deprecations to do it sooner than later, the easier it's going to be when Drupal 9 lands, because there's less work will fall on that time. So we started looking at what tooling can we put in to support deprecations. And there's already some testing tooling on Drupal.org, so I posted a blog post that was meant to get some discussion going around how we do this better, because the current solution is not very nice. But I'm going to put my post link here. So it's basically a very manual way that you can enable deprecation testing on Drupal.org and have it report failures for you. And then we kind of diverged to 3 different angles in how we can support this better. So there's one angle to make this configurable on Drupal.org itself, on the UI for branch testing, etc., and to properly collect all the deprecation failures and not fail the build on the first fail, which according to Ryan was an issue. So to improve that tooling, and there's another branch where we wanted to improve tooling on api.drupal.org, which currently lists all the deprecated things, but it doesn't actually allow you to limit deprecations to things that are deprecated and be removed in Drupal 9. So once we start deprecating and removing in Drupal 10, then those will also show up. So you would get to learn about things that you should not do anything about yet for the foreseeable future. And also it shows all the deprecations that are in core versions that are still supported, which you should also not do anything about if you want to support those core branches. So we want to add some tooling on api.drupal.org to allow you to filter by deprecating version and removing versions. And for that, we want to have more metadata of the deprecations. And I worked with Jennifer Hodgson, and she basically wrote down the steps that somebody needs to implement on the API module. One by one, she basically wrote down all the pieces of code that needs to change to make that happen. So if somebody has the time to do that, that's a very nice way to improve that tool. And there was a third layer where we wanted to look at how to log deprecation errors on actual sites. And Matt Gleiman posted a post where it's an offline code analysis tool that analyzes your code base and finds deprecated things. And I suggested an online tool on your site which allows the site to collect the deprecation messages as people use your site, and that would aggregate them and have you some stats on the most painful deprecating, or at least the most commonly invoked deprecated things, and would allow you to prioritize working on them. And that's in an ideation phase, so there's no actual code to make it work. The code that I posted was an ugly proof of concept that still needs a lot more work. So those are the 3 branches: on-site deprecation collection, API Drupal.org improvements, and testing improvements that we looked at for deprecations. And then Catch started looking at Symfony 4 support issues and found a bunch of issues there. And some people started working on them, but I haven't been able to follow up with what exactly went there.
Before you move too far on the logging thing, I just pasted into the group chat an issue that sort of consolidates all of the error message generation. And one of the things that the current patch has is the ability to pass in a logger. So we could then, in theory, send it to a text file logger or some other alternative logger, maybe. That's why it's still in needs review. I'm not sure how we could better inject that with contrib or something to send it to some alternative location.
Yeah, the problem with doing it through the error handling system, is that it will go to all the loggers and it will fire all the error handling stuff, and it may end up in your DB log and it will pollute that, etc., etc. We should ideally lock this in a separate place. And if we have this static utility method that Mike was proposing, then we can log from there.
Yeah.
Then we don't need to go into the whole error logging system.
So, something to follow.
Yeah, and also we don't need to string parse back the data from 2 levels of string formatting that happens before it actually ends up in the logs, which is crazy. Yeah, so we mainly focus on deprecations because that's the thing that we need to get on with early, and the sooner people do that, sooner people deal with that, the more Drupal 9 compatible they will be.
So one comment about the deprecations, I was a little bit trepidatious to implement what you had written up, Gabor, because of some of the reports from JSON API.
Mm-hmm.
What I found, though, is those things might be more applicable to JSON API than my lowly set of modules, because I didn't have any issues doing it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I think perhaps some of those concerns around JSON API are valid, but might be more of the exception rather than the rule. And I would hate to dissuade folks from doing deprecation testing because they heard something, or there was a rumor that someone had mentioned it was not a good idea to do.
Mm-hmm.
But your documentation was sufficient to go out and do it. And so I have, and we learned a lot. And we've now got 4 modules that are all deprecation upgraded.
All right, so you found your errors. That's nice.
Yeah, I did. I found a lot of things, but I also found that I wasn't testing as much as I needed to either.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the thing that Mike wants to. So Mike wanted to write a blog post or a blog post series about this and how best to approach that as a country module. That's how he ended up with proposing this utility method as well. But yeah, as I wrote in my post, the results of the method largely depend on whether you actually wrote the automated tests that would actually execute the code that may be using something deprecated. And for it to be actually using the trigger error mechanism that not all of core uses right now for deprecated things, and a bunch of other conditions. So it's not foolproof, but it gets you forward on the way, and less to deal with later on. That's the point. So the easier we can make this, the more forward compatible Drupal 8 modules can be. But there's always a caveat of which core versions you support at that point. So people need to be clear about that as well. Yeah, that's for Drupal 9. Anything else we want to discuss? Questions, things Angie or I can help with, escalate to core committers?
Tim Plunkett did re-review the configurable plugin interface patch, and that's now been reviewed by a subsystem maintainer and still is in RTBC. So, well, actually, I think it kicked back for a change record update, but perhaps that we could have a core committer also look at that. Do you need me to paste the link?
Sure.
I'll paste it here in a second, looking it up.
And I'm writing up some of what I said. All right. Anything else? I will put this configurable plugin thing on the migrate notes. Right. If that's all, then thanks everyone. Keep up the great work, and let us know anytime we can help.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Thank you.